All right, everyone. Welcome to Peak Performers Group Best Practices for this month. Our topic is the buy appointments. And many of you have asked to have a training on the buy appointment. So we are excited to put one together. We are excited to have a panel this time. And myself and Mike will be the moderator. We do have a list of questions that have been provided to the panelists to be able to answer. So they're going to do their best to answer these questions based on what they do for their best practices on their franchise. So, but everyone needs to remember that each franchise is independently owned and operated. They're going to give us what they do, and they're all experienced, well qualified, been a franchisee for a very long time. So certainly I would listen to what they have to share with us. But don't forget, we all run our own business the way that we choose to run. So we have Steve Coons, we have Spencer Jones, and Sean Miller. So thank you so much for volunteering. I kind of force you guys to, so thank you for doing so.
Voluntold.
Thank you. So, I personally have I don't say not wanted to do a buy appointment presentation, because in my own business, I feel like that I make the buy even sometimes before going to the buy appointment, because of all the things that we do prior to the buy appointment sets up the buy appointment to go super smooth. And people ask me, hey, what do you do on the buy appointment? I'm like, man, I already did most of my work beforehand because of all the things I did before. But I think this is a good topic to hear what we actually do. So we're going to break it down. One, what do we do before the appointment? What's our mindset before we walk in? How do we handle the first 3 to 5 minutes of walking through the door? What's our goal? What are we trying to accomplish during the buy appointments? Talk about the step out, if we do a step out or not. If so, what do we do on the step out? We're going to talk about what happens if they say no, right, to our offer. And what happens if they say yes? We're going to talk about how you guys walk the seller through the contract and get that signed. And then we're also going to talk about the post-sale conversations. That's kind of the topics that we have here. So why don't we just jump right into it? So my first question for you three is, you get the lead, you do your job on the phone, which we do have other best practices on how to handle that incoming call, but you make the appointment, you hang up the phone. So you hang up the phone, you have the appointment, and your appointment's maybe in 5 days. What do you do to prepare from the time you hang up the phone to the time that you ring the doorbell? What are some things that you guys do?
Well, I guess I'll go first. Typically, I'll start with the property, and I'll start with the seller, and I'll see what I can find out about them, either by Googling their name or whatever. I'll look up the tax address through I'm a realtor, so we have access to Monsoon, which gets us a lot of detail on the tax details, which will show if they've had a loan or anything on it. So I'll try and see what kind of where they're at, if they've recently refinanced or how much equity they really have in the house. And then I'll just go to the property and start searching, what my comps are. And then that sets up what I do before I even get to the property, because then I'll take those comps and I'll typically drive by to see if it's a comparable street, comparable, if I feel like it's, actually something I can use for my ARV. But I'll be quiet now. What do you guys do?
This is Spencer. So yeah, I do very similar. I jump on Monsoon and check tax records and comp it out. If it gets a little bit tricky, oftentimes I'll reach out to colleagues. Ted, I probably bug him the most. Sorry, Ted. He has a good pulse on comping property, so I like to trust other people. And for whatever reason, it seems like getting a second opinion helps me. Know what the values are, but that's my most important thing, is just trying to get to know what the ARV is before I show up, to make me that much more confident in the appointment as far as knowing what I can offer. So I will also email a appointment confirmation. That's been something that's made a big difference. Just a quick email that confirms the time and date. it's all part of the upfront contract process that gives me that much more credibility when showing up to the home.
Yeah, I do a lot of the same stuff. I mean, first thing I do, I usually send that email that I got from Ryan a long time ago. I think it just helps establish credibility and that there's someone they can trust and that we're not just some guy in the corner, essentially. So I send that email with some information about us, and then when the appointment's going to be, I'll then also text them the day of for the appointment, especially if I'm driving to Los Angeles. I mean Goodyear, sorry, to get that confirmation before I drive out there. But yeah, I'm big on the comping as well. And like Steve said, I like to figure out if they owe anything on the house, how much they owe. Because if they owe as much as what my offer is going to be, I want to know that ahead of time going into it. I think comping is really huge. One thing I do when I comp is I comp like a big area, and then I'll narrow it down just to the neighborhood, especially if I don't know the neighborhood, because I want to see what that neighborhood's doing activity wise. Right now, probably the one thing I like the most when I comp is I look back at, what's the current number of listings in that area, and then how much has sold in the last 60 days. And for me, I'm looking for at least 50% of what's listed has sold in the last 60 days. That tells me things are moving or not moving in the neighborhood. And obviously, if you're getting like 100%, which I've seen a lot lately, things are moving. So I know I can maybe be a little more aggressive if I know things are moving faster in that neighborhood versus another neighborhood on pricing. But pricing in that, and then I'll occasionally Facebook stalk somebody just to see if I can figure out, has somebody passed away, has somebody divorced, and just trying to figure out what their situation might be if I don't know what their pain is already, in essence. So that's kind of where I start.
One thing I want to add real quick is just the texting before I go to the appointment. I've learned the hard way, but I try to make it not a text of confirmation, make something like, hey, making sure it's still okay that I come out. It almost gives them doubt, like, why wouldn't it be? We already said this appointment. So I just oftentimes before I leave, I'll just say, hey, just so you know, I'm en route, or I'm scheduled to be there on time. Looks like there might be a little bit of traffic on the 10. Just want to give you a heads up. There's a chance I might be just a few minutes late. And so you're assuming that, hey, we're still on track, not making sure it's okay that I come over. So just a little bit, change in wording to help it look more of an assumptive appointment.
So, I mean, I think all of us, of course, will look up the owner, look up tax records, look up the loan amount. We all run our own comps, right? I mean, we better be doing that, I hope. But I know in our business, and I've talked about this with myself and Matt, the importance of being prepared of who the seller is, right? Can you guys maybe talk more about that? I know you mentioned Facebook. Why is that important to maybe know who the person is? What's their background? How long have they owned it for? Why is that important to maybe have a small upper hand there?
I'm still getting good at, knowing if someone's a yellow, green, or blue type of thing. But I think looking at their career, looking at, the age of the person, it just gives you an idea of like what type of person I'm kind of preparing for and who I need to talk to. Do they like to travel? Because then it gives me opportunities to build rapport with people as well, and also make sure I don't step in something by, oh yeah, I don't like the University of Arizona Wildcats, say, and they're huge U of A fans, right? They just stepped in and I'm in trouble. So things like that, I think, are just super helpful. So you can be armed going into it.
I think also knowing what demographic they're in, age wise, especially, helps at least for me, how to dress. Older folks like it when you show up a little bit more polished, and that's just me and my perception, but it changes how I dress. Sometimes I'll wear pants on those appointments if it's older folks that are more traditional and old school. But I need to do a better job at doing more research on find out. I don't Facebook stuff. I'm not even on Facebook, but I need to do a better job of doing some more of that background check. So it's good advice.
You can look back at our last training. We talk about in depth about how much research that our franchise does, and it really does help us out. So I encourage everyone to do that. So let's talk about, what do you bring with you to the appointments? Are are you dressed? Are you wearing a name tag? Are you bringing collateral? What are you bringing with you on your person when you walk into the house, if anything?
So I found it. Oh, I just bought a name tag last June, and I feel like that's really helped. I think, you know, especially as I go into these houses where they've met with 2 or 3 other people, and you see like this is, I don't know, just gives you that, you just, hey, I'm tied to something bigger feel. But typically, name tag, I usually have a folder with a sample contract in it, and then and it's a folder that you can buy through Ugville. And that's basically all I have with me. And I mean, that's, I don't want to inundate people with, you know, with too much stuff, or I used to take a clipboard through and write notes as well, but I found that um, depending on the seller, sometimes that is distracting to them. So I just go in with the folder with the sample contract and then my name tag.
All right. I've been recently been bringing this folder with me. It has just a little cheesy handout flyer, and I think it makes a difference. I'm gonna keep doing it. Like I said, I haven't done it for years. I just started doing it this last month. Outside of that, I bring a folder that, or a little notebook that I take notes in, name tag always. But other than that, I leave the contract. I don't bring the contract in the home with me. Usually leave that in the car for when I go out to the car, which I know we'll touch on here in a minute.
I like the folder idea. I walk in with this kind of business portfolio thing that you can open up, and inside I've got all my stuff. I have my business card. I've got this pamphlet that I always bring with me and leave with them. I always feel it's good to leave people with something, get just more credibility. I have a flashlight with me. And I also have my partner, John, most of the time with me, because he and I play a good cop, bad cop type routine. And he can pick up where I miss off sometimes, or he's more credibility on the construction side of things. So I bring him. And I'm wearing a polo, but with the logo on the polo when I go in. I always wear pants when I go to the appointment. John will wear shorts sometimes because he's my construction guy, right? So he looks the construction guy part a little bit more than I do. So I look more the business side. And so we kind of play on each other a little bit with that.
You know, I forgot about the flashlight. I think that's huge. I mean, because you can have the theatrics of point of the flashlight, right? And
Yeah.
you're pointed at the ceiling, and it really shows the seller, well, I'm concerned about this, right? I'm sure you're using the flashlight for your own inspection, but do you use it for anything else during the walkthrough?
So John does my inspection for me. He doesn't have a flashlight. He's got a tape measure. So he's measuring the rooms, like he's looking all official so people feel we're more credible. I got the flashlight. I'm flashing it up on the ceiling. I'm checking under the sinks, and I'll point stuff out. I'm using it more as a distraction, because then when I'm doing the flashlight, I'll ask him questions. Like literally one of the questions I learned at the conferences was walk around like no care in the world and be like, so what were you hoping to get for the place? I'm just like looking around with my flashlight, just casual conversation, you know, trying to get their number from them. And I'll ask them 3 different ways to get their number, all while I'm holding the flashlight. And that's been working really, really well to get a number out of people. So
that's a great idea. Thank you very much for those answers. I just want to add too, like when I am going to the appointment, I will text them and I'll let them actually say, hey, I'm actually running a little bit early. I might be there 5 minutes early. Does that work for you? If not, I'll be there at our appointed time. So I kind of say the same thing. I'm already on my way, and I'm going to be there a few minutes early, because I do feel like people like it when people are prompt. So I play like I'm going to be there early, and if that's okay. And most time, like, oh yeah, we're already here waiting for you. And showing up early is always good. So, and then driving comps. You guys mentioned you guys all drive the comps. Are you guys doing it before you ring the doorbell? Are you driving properties that you might want to use as comps?
I do 2 things. I show up early and I drive the neighborhood, and I drive a couple of the comps that are close by, because one street in the neighborhood can look horrible and the next one looks great. And I want to know kind of what I'm dealing with.
And of course, I mean, this is for your market knowledge too, but the seller might go, oh, this house on 123 Home Run Lane. And all of a sudden you already are a professional and already drove by it. Do you ever look and go, oh man, this is a vacant house, this is a model match? Do you ever go look inside the house of a possible comparable?
I've never done when I'm driving one. Usually I'll look for them online at MLS, and I'm looking for that gold match of a exact floor plan and sold. When I do my comps, I also envision of like what I think we'll do to that house, and I'm trying to find a comp that matches the inside of what I'll do to the house as well.
So yeah, I mean, anything we can do to gain market knowledge, you should do. Okay, it's tough to get appointments, tough to buy houses. So there are times that we will actually go 2 hours in advance and we are actually previewing the house. We are walking through other houses, seeing how they look, how they compare. Oh, this is a 7. And even if it's pending or under contract, I will call the listing agent and I'll be honest with them. I'll tell them exactly what I'm doing. And I know it's pending. I'm just previewing it because I might be buying another house. And do you have any pocket buyers? And in exchange, if I end up getting this house under contract, I will call you first to give you a chance to be able to bring your buyer to it. So I have to look at pending houses too that are vacant. Okay, great. If there's not any questions on this topic, we'll move to topic number 2. All
I
right,
was just
so
gonna, hey, this is Heidi
Please.
real quick. I was gonna say, I always try to go early if there's vacant houses nearby and walk through real quick. One time I was running some comps and there was one pending really low down the street that looked like it had been remodeled, and I couldn't figure out why it was pending so low. So I decided to walk through it, and it was open door, and they did a crappy job. The pictures didn't show it. The pictures looked really good, but when I walked through, I'm like, this is why it's pending so low. So I think it is really valuable to try and walk through real quick a few of them if you can.
exactly. Thank you. All right, so we're at the door. We knock on the door and they open the door, and I'm sure we all say, here's my card, my name. But what is the first thing that most sellers want us to do or expect us to do?
Start looking around the house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you 3 prefer to do? Do you guys want to walk around the house and do your inspection and take a look, or do you want to have a conversation first?
Always have the conversation first.
I agree.
Why?
Yeah, just always start with the upfront contract and have a conversation first.
It can depend. Sometimes you get this type A person that like you just got to just go with the flow, and that's very rare. But usually I try to control the appointment, but make them feel like they're in control, but sit down and talk first is what my goal is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a prime example. I mean, some guys are just adamant about, hey, this is my home, you're doing what I'm telling you, and you definitely want to go with the flow. It just gets awkward if you try to pause their guidance or the direction they're trying to point things. So everything is a little bit different, but also if you, in part of the initial conversation, if you set a proper upfront contract over the phone prior to the appointment and mention, hey, the first thing and the most important thing that we're going to do when we have a chance to meet is we like to sit down first and foremost and just see if we're a good fit for you. And so, you know, they're kind of almost expecting that. You almost have to remind them, but that helps is saying that in the initial call. So that when you show up, it's not oh, well, everybody else is already just, you know, when they come in the home, all they want to do is come in and get pictures and get out. So that, you know, you want to set yourself apart from the competition as well. So I think it starts with the upfront contract over the phone.
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on. I mean, if we did the upfront contract over the phone, in our email, in our conversation, most of the time they already know they want that we're going to sit down. So, so for the upfront contract, what is that setting up for the rest of the appointment? How is that helping you? If you do the upfront contract properly, how is that helping you throughout the rest of the appointment?
In my opinion, it really just sets the stage for, you know, sometimes the seller doesn't know, or they have an idea of what they think may happen, but it almost puts them at ease. Like, oh, well, we're going with how things are supposed to go right now. So it really relaxes them, in my opinion, for the most part. Say, hey, this is typically what I see. This is typically what homeowners are wanting to see from us, and this is what I would like to know from you, and then we're going to go here. Just kind of, you set the agenda. So as they're going room to room and you're doing the flashlight thing and you're doing your, they're going about the process that you already told them about, and they're going with the flow instead of them being kind of awkward and not knowing what to do.
Yeah, I like the upfront contract builds an agreement of an expectation. And when people have agreements, thing I learned a long time ago, when you build an agreement with somebody, it actually builds a bond of a connection. And so then people actually like you more. They're more, like Steve said, they feel more comfortable with what you're doing. So I always make sure I get an agreement of what we're there to do and what the outcome should be. Not that it always ends up with my outcome, but at least we know what we're going for.
Yeah. And then when you have the upfront contract in person, it echoes what you've already discussed over the phone, and it adds just that much more credibility and or level of comfort on their end. And then it helps you also control the conversation without being controlling.
Excellent. So for those who, I hope all of you know what the upfront contract is, but if you don't, and if you want to learn how to do one, we've done presentations specifically on the upfront contract. And so if you don't have that presentation, let me know. I'll forward it to you. If anyone wants to do a one-on-one on upfront contract, please reach out to Michael and myself. I do feel like that the upfront contract is the most important thing that we do on the buy appointment. It sets the stage, the tone. It allows us to ask the hard-hitting questions. It gives them the freedom to ask us questions. We tell them how long we're going to be there for, so they know, and it tells them what's going to happen at the end. So everyone's on the same page. Remember, these sellers don't know who we are. They think we're just going to take advantage of them. We have a nice car and a lot of cash, and we're just going to steal their house. So they have the guard up, right? So it's vital that we have a really good upfront contract.
One thing on that too, Ryan, I'm relatively new still in this industry and getting better at it. When I first started off, I had one guy call me out. I was like, "Oh, you started the process. I can tell." So I've learned to be better about just letting your upfront contract be part of your natural speech flow and just feels like you're just having a conversation with people. One thing I do on every appointment when I'm driving there is I go through the first like 10 minutes of my appointment. I just role play it with John in the car, or I'll do it in my own head just so that my mindset and my language is set to make it sound more natural and just have it all ready to go. So.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, Ryan, you mentioned, one of your first question when you opened up this second portion was when you first walk up to the door. So I think there's a couple key things that I have learned over time, and that is, that first when they open that door and they're seeing you through the screen door, make sure you've got a presentable, likable smile on your face. It makes a big difference. And then I'm trying to be cognizant of their culture. A lot of times people don't have shoes. So I always offer to, I shouldn't say always, I notice if they don't have shoes on, I will typically ask, "Hey, would you prefer me to take my shoes off?" And nice. That gains a lot of respect. It's funny. Some of the houses I've walked through without my shoes are natty and you have no idea why you're doing it, but they really appreciate it, and most people don't. So it sets us apart. Anyways, and then as far as the upfront contract, one of the first thing I say is just, "Hey, I appreciate you invite me into your home. Thanks for making the time to have me over, whatever it might be." Just as part of the upfront contract, but just one of the first things I say.
So who is willing to share a shorter version of your upfront contract? You have a nice seller, they're not type A, you feel comfortable. Do you guys have a shorter upfront contract that you want to share with us?
Let's hear Sean's.
Steve, I saw you unmute. I go, "Great, Steve's taking it." Thanks, man. Well, it's hard because I try to make it just flow through. Even my upfront contract, I try to make it just part of my conversation so they don't even know I'm doing it to them. But there are parts to it, right? And Spencer hit the first part, which is appreciation for letting me come in. I'm careful not to say, "Thanks for letting me come into your beautiful home," or your really nice home, because most times they're not. And then people think you're too salesy. So watch your language, just as a little side note. Thanks for inviting me to your house. Right. But yeah, I just do like, hey, just like we talked about, about 45 to 60 minutes of your time. If we go over, we can talk about that. And if you want me to continue or wherever we want to do from there. And I just, typically, and then I do the a ton process, right? Appreciation and then typical. So, typically, as a seller, you're going to have some questions. One thing I learned from Brad at Sandler is you give them 3 things that you're looking for, which is pain, money, decision. So I say typically people looking for, why are you trying to sell your house? How much are you looking for the house? Actually, no, they're questions. I'm sorry. That's my questions. Sorry. I'll say typically people want to know if I'm somebody that they can trust. They also want to know how much I can pay for the house. And typically they want to know when I can close on the house. Is there anything else that you'd want me to make sure I cover in our appointment today? Good. So I give them 3 things to kind of prime them for what I'm looking for, but then I give them an opportunity to say, what do you want me to cover to make sure you can make the best decision and choice for you? Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, obviously I have some questions like, what are you trying to sell the house for? There's my money. Is there anybody else that needs to make the decision process with us as well? And then kind of what's your timeline? So I'll do the same thing, right? Pay money decision with them as well. And then I'll start just kind of let the conversation go where it's going. I'm trying to really push. Sometimes they'll jump right into their pain. And I don't want to get stuck thinking I got to get through my upfront contract. If they're going down their pain funnel for me right away, I just go with it. And then I'll finish my upfront contract, at the end of it or whatever. So it's not so structured. I got to get through my contract, but I want to make sure I cover all that. And then if everyone's familiar with it, obviously I always finish with the, hey, look, at the end of the day, if this works great for both of us, then great, we can figure that out. But I also want to make sure, if this is something that's not appropriate, or not going to work for you guys, it's okay to tell me no, And I like to approach things with the point of view of like, hey, I'm here to help you. You don't understand this investor side like I do. So if I'm not the right fit for you, then let me be someone who can give you advice and guidance of what you can do. So I always let them know that that's kind of my approach. And I always drop the line with, hey, I'm not really salesy. I'm not really good at this sell stuff. I'm just going to shoot you straight. And if I can't, it doesn't work for us, then at least let me help give you some guidance and advice of what I think you can do. But if it doesn't work out, that's okay. And that's kind of what I do.
I mean, and that's what's important is that the upfront contract needs to come out of you naturally, right? You need to do it on your comfort level, but there are some things that we need to check off with upfront contract, right? We appreciate there's time. We're going to talk about your agenda as a seller. This is my agenda, and 1 or 2 things are going to happen at the end. However you say that in your own world, that's what you have to accomplish, and that's very, very important. There are times that like I will go like do my script. And then I'll kind of laugh going, all right, now I got the business out of the way. What are you hoping I can do for you? Right. I kind of make a joke and I'm like, and I'm professional. They know it's going to happen. And it's like awkwardness. I'm like, all right, I finally got the business out of the way. Let's figure out how I can help you out. So with that said, we have upfront contract. What is the first question? Do you have a question? If it is, what is a question that you ask right out of the gate to get the conversation going?
I think one of the first questions that help, and it again goes along with the upfront contract, is help me understand how I can help you. What's most important to you, and what are you hoping I'm able to do in this situation?
Why are you using hoping? You're here to buy my house. What do you mean hope?
What they're hoping I can do. So yeah, I don't know. Good question.
It's, I mean, you don't even know if you want to buy the house here, right? You don't even know if they want to sell it to you, right? So
yeah, correct. I think part of the upfront contract is also letting them know that, hey, we may not even be a good fit for you. I want you to feel comfortable if we decide we're not able to purchase your home. I want to make sure you're okay with that, just as much as we want you to feel comfortable telling us, hey, thanks for coming out, but no thanks, this isn't going to work for me. So it kind of goes both ways, so they see that it's not a slam dunk. We're not just anxious to try to buy your house and give you an offer. We may not be a good fit, and hopefully you're okay with me letting you know that we're not a good option. And if we're not a good option, I want you to feel comfortable that I'll help you, point you in the right direction of what might be a better fit for you.
Great. Steve, Sean, what do you guys ask first?
Usually that's after I get the upfront contract. And they know kind of how it's going to go. I just say, so typically when people call us, there's a few reasons why they call us, whether it's they have a lot of repairs, or or they can't pay the monthly payments or something, but that probably doesn't apply to you. So what is it why am I here? And then that usually, oh no, I have some roof problems and I got this, and they go right into some of the bigger issues. Or they may actually tell me, I guess I start working on that pain funnel, and then as they start going into that, then I'll say, how about we do this? Why don't you start showing me around the house, and we can talk a little bit more about this while you show me that roof leak that you told me about, and then we'll start going through the house that way while they're talking about their pain funnel and some of the reasons why they need me to buy the house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right along the lines of Steve and Spencer. Like, I'm trying to get their pain started. If they haven't already told me, which I find a lot of times they've already alluded to it, I'm just always like, why did you call us? Or what about the letter that you saw when you called us made you pick up and call me out today? I'm just trying to get them started. That's usually where I go, is that question, like what Steve said.
So often we'll maybe get 1 or 2, 3 pains over the phone. Sometimes they mention it right away. You can say, hey, you mentioned X, and you get the ball rolling there. But for myself, I'm like, hey, every seller has us come out for different reasons. Do you mind just sharing with me why I'm here today, and what are you hoping I can accomplish for you today? So I use the same thing. What are you hoping that can happen today? And I keep saying today, because I want them to either go, oh, it's not going to happen today, or yes, it has to happen. So that's my first question, to get the ball rolling. And you want them to tell you their story. Why you? Why me? Why now? Like, why are you calling me? And why are you calling me now? And if they give you some pains, are you guys giving them solutions right there on the spot?
I've learned not to give solutions the hard way. I've learned to more just be inquisitive and more like I care, right? And just ask questions and keep asking questions about whatever they're talking about. Make them feel like they're doing all the talking as much as they can.
Yeah. So if you're on the buy appointments and you ask a question and they give you the answer, we have a solution for them. But that's not the time to give the solution. Okay? We need to get deeper. We need to find out what the real pain is by using the pain funnel. So often I'll get their pain and I'm like, you know what? Thank you for sharing that with me. Let me write that down so we make sure that we can talk about that more. And then I'll kind of sometimes move on, like, well, you also mentioned this, and you also mentioned this. And I will sit there and write it down. And so just keep in mind, don't give solutions at this point of the buy appointment. Okay. So I have a question here. What are you trying to accomplish during the buy appointment? What is important to you? So what are you trying to check off, and what are you trying to accomplish during the buy appointment?
I think pain's the biggest one. I mean, is it truly the right pain, and is it deep enough in the pain funnel to have compelling reasons as to why they need you and why they need to sell right away? But I'm trying to get a number out of them. I try often, in fact, before I even start walking the house, I try getting a number out of them, a range, and then like Sean mentioned, the flashlight idea, usually when I'm walking around, that's when the guard's down a little bit. They're kind of showing me the house where they're giving me and that's when I'll try maybe getting a number out of them again in a roundabout way. But I love the flashlight idea. I'm definitely going to try that. But that's one of my goals, is trying to get a number from them. And it's not always that easy.
Yeah, I agree. I think the pain, but not everyone is willing to give you their pain, or sometimes they don't have pain. And so I'm trying to figure out who my seller is, right? Where is their situation? What's really going on? Why did they call me out? Who am I dealing with? With all my background stuff I've done before, do they match what I thought they were? But like Spencer said, we'll walk around, and when I have that flashlight, I'm building a lot of rapport, because I want them to trust me. I want them to know that, hey, you and I are very similar. We both like the Cardinals or whatever it might be, right? I'm just trying to build rapport so that, and it's genuine, right? I like to get to know people, so I just be myself at that point in time. But if I get the pain and I get them to trust me, I just find things go a lot smoother when those two things happen.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Basically, yeah, the idea at this point is to find the pain and start getting them talking about their number. What is it that they're thinking about?
So the Sandler's summary goes pain, budget, decision. Do you guys go in that order every single time, or do you guys sometimes have to bounce around?
Bounce around.
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, some sellers, you sit down with them and they say, I've had 3 people through here already. The highest bid is so they're already telling me a number. So it doesn't necessarily mean that's the number I'm trying to give them or beat, but they come out and that's the boom, here's the number. And then you kind of have to work around and see why they're having all these companies, it's kind of working around it, but I don't know, it just depends on the seller, I guess.
Yeah, there's times I find where I go in for the budget step, right? And I get some resistance. I might just push a little bit more, and I get a little more resistance. I'm like, all right, don't keep pushing. And I move on. I didn't close that budget submarine area, so I had to go another direction. And then it might be the flashlight move 20 minutes later where you bring that back into the equation, right? But as we learn in Sandler, we have to learn their pain. We need to close that compartment completely. We need to determine the budget. They should never be surprised with our offer. They should at least have an idea of what we're going to offer them. Correct? But the last compartment is the decision step. Why is the decision step important for us to determine? And what are you trying to determine in the decision step?
Mostly I'm trying to make sure that who I'm talking to is the one making the decision, or who else is involved in the decision. Like one of my first buys, the guy's wife was in Florida, and so just trying to make sure she was in on the decision as well, or am I dealing with other family members? Because you can give this guy a number, he's like, well, that's great. Now I got to give everybody else to let me know what it is. So I usually try to get that right up front, who else is making the decision. But yeah, just that process, and then the timing of the decision is huge as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, how many times have we given an offer and they're like, oh, thank you very much, I'm calling another investor tomorrow, or I got to compare it or talk to my realtor? Like, that's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I know we want to get the pain, we want to get the number, but I have been bit in the butt more times than not by not doing a good job on the decision step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I always try when I'm walking around, hey, why don't you list this house with a realtor? Like what's stopping you from doing that? I think that, a lot of people have had success doing that. Why don't you do it? Oh, I don't want people coming through the house, or no, or yeah, I've had a realtor come out here, but they said I should get a cash offer first or something, so you start getting those things coming out.
So one thing that we do for the decision step on the buy appointment is on our phone call. After we take the phone call, we book the appointment. Before we get off the phone, I'll ask, I'm just curious, does anyone else need to be there to be part of the process? Oh yeah, my dad out of Florida should know about this. So I often know about the decision step over the phone. Right? You look on tax records as you're talking to the person, and there's a second person on title. Hey, does anyone else have to be there? You're playing dumb because you already know Bob Smith is on title. Like, oh no, it's just me selling the house. Okay, that's great. Who's Bob Smith? Right? So I can usually get the decision step kind of halfway done over the call. Okay. So we got pain, budget, decision. And if you guys are with Brad or with Sandler, you'll go deeper on these tactics and different sales training aspects to be able to gather this information. But remember, we're not giving solutions, we're gathering during these stages of the buy appointment. Any questions from anyone up to this point? Does anyone have any specific questions we can answer or go over? Do you guys have any questions that you go to every time to be able to get the price out, or you're in a competitive situation, they're not drawing out pain? Is there anything you guys use in your arsenal to be able to, when they say, oh, I got 3 offers,
Yeah.
or I'm not going to give you the price? How do you guys handle those
Yeah.
situations?
Sandler had well, Brad at Sandler had a training where, you know, if you could wave the magic wand, right? And you come on their side and you point almost like you're putting your arm around them and you're pointing off to the side, say, what's the perfect scenario? What's the perfect picture? Almost like you're like, dream it up with me. Tell me what's the dream scenario here? And that usually gets them, oh, well, I'd probably close in 30 days and I, you know, and I get this much money and I'd be on my way. And so it kind of gets you on their side because you're, oh yeah, well that's a great picture that you just painted for me there, you know. So that's, if I can't get them, if all my other tactics haven't worked, that's usually just and use your hands. Hey, what is the perfect scenario for you? Wave your magic wand and tell me what that perfect world looks like for you.
I like that. I've done that. I think that's great. There's been a few other things I've tried. History tells me, you know, before I have a chance to meet with folks, that they've had a chance to discuss what number or a range, what they're hoping for. Do you mind sharing with me in round numbers what that is? And the round numbers sometimes helps. A range kind of helps them feel comfortable not committing to give you an exact number, but you know, you might just share me maybe a range that you're hoping for. And if they're still hard, again, sometimes I'll shift gears. One thing I tried just this week was, hey, I actually really like this home, and I was genuine. I was up in the Superstitions. It was a really cool house. This was a dig lead, and I said I'd love the opportunity to purchase this home. Corporate, they tend to be conservative. I'm kind of in between. I'm hoping to get close to where you need to be, and oftentimes what helps me is being able to share with them, a number that you're hoping for. And it helps me bridge the gap. If I can't get approval for a number that works for you, I'm unable to purchase a home. But if there's something that I'm shooting for as I'm working to get approval for an offer, it helps me. So I use the corporate card, not always, but sometimes when it helps them feel like you're on their side instead of me against you. And so the corporate things help me get the number a lot. When it's been hard to get it out of them.
I have a 3-step process. I'll ask them directly up front, like, hey, what are you hoping to get for the place? And if I don't get a number, then I'll do the ballpark or magic wand ones. Like, hey, just ballparking. What do you guys kind of like? Where are we at? So make sure we're in the same ballpark here. And then if they're still playing hardball, I just want to see if I get a number. Then I'll do the bracketing with my number, because I kind of already know what I'll pay for the house. I've already done my comps. I already know what my rehab's going to be approximately. So I kind of know where I'm at. I'll then give a ballpark range of like, well, what are you looking for? Are you looking like, what if I told you I was between 300 and 330? What would you say? Just like, I don't know where I'm at. I got to go find out. I got to talk to corporate. But what if I told you I was between 300 and 330? What would you say? You just see what their reaction is. I'm like, oh, no, that's way too low. We're like, oh, yeah, we're in the ballpark. I'm like, okay. So at least I know I can deal with them type of aspect. So I'll throw my number in that bracket, or close to it. So I know if they're willing to play with me. or over for me.
So you ask them the first round of questions, you give them a range, and all of a sudden they tell you a price or a range, and it's higher than you already know you can pay.
Oh wow. Whew.
What do you guys
Yeah.
do? So you're at 300, like I want $400,000 for this place. You guys ever
Typically,
respond to that?
I'll ask that. I'm just curious how you came up with that number. Help me understand.
Yeah, I do the him and hom. Like, ooh, wow. Yeah, exactly. And then going to Spencer. How did you come up with that number? But yeah, that's typically they usually tell you, oh, my neighbor down the street sold for 400,000.
So for me to
Or
answer the question,
My realtor said I should be able to get 400,000. What's that?
if it's like super high, I'm like it's way high. I'll make a joke. I'm like, yeah, if I were you, I'll try and get that also. I don't blame you. Like, all right, cool. I'm not the right fit anymore, right? Yeah, man. If you can get that, I think you should. And it sounds like I'm not the right fit. I appreciate your time. Like I matched how hard they come at me because the 400,000 is above retail. Like you're wrong. So I just go as hard. Like okay, good luck, and all of a sudden they'll pull us back in, right? But yeah, if like we're close, I think you guys are right. Going, hey, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm just curious how to come up with that number, right? And then if you guys are close, I also play the pretend game. Well, what happens if I could pay that? Right? That's part of the decision step during the budget step. Let's play. Well, what happens if I could pay that price? What happens next? And they're going to say, well, yeah, if you can pay that, I'll sell it to you right now. Really? You never said you would, right? But sometimes they'll say, well, I have another investor coming after you, and you're able to get the decision step out of them there too, right?
Yeah. I one of the things I really liked at one of the conferences, the guy says you never want to sticker shock your seller. And sometimes maybe they think it's worth 400 and they don't really know why they just don't really know, but it's actually only worth 3, right? And so sometimes you have to help them come to the reality it's only worth 3. Like they're not always playing hardball. Sometimes they just truly don't know. So he says, don't ever sticker shock your clients, your sellers by giving them a low number. Like make sure they're prepared to receive your lower number. So
Yeah, I've learned the hard way in that one for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So, lady, I gave the offer and lady said, get the F out. I said, okay. Have a good day.
If they are shopping, I had an appointment in Casa Grande earlier this week, and they had been shopping us compared to everybody else, and they shared a number of what a competitor was going to give them. I just straight up said, hey, that's fantastic. And that seems like a great deal. Why didn't you take that? Help me understand. Like that's fantastic. And then usually you get more pain or you get some other reasons. This guy was just, well, I was hoping you'd give me more because that seemed low. And at that point in time, you're not a good option. It's like, hey, if I were you, I would take that. And at that point in time, you're not going to, more than likely not going to win unless you can create enough doubt about who it is that they might be going with. And if you're close and you think you can make a deal work, that's when you maybe go down that road. But I think just going negative on those scenarios, reversing it on them is your best. What's worked best for me.
And last week we put one under contract, and they had an offer from Doug Hopkins, and they had another offer. And the way she put it was some Florida investment company, and the Florida investment company was like 30 grand higher than Doug Hopkins. And so I was able to use. I said, usually Doug's a little lower than we are because I knew where our number was going to be at. And I said, and the problem with these other companies that come out of nowhere, we get beat all the time by them. But then what you don't realize in their contract is they're going to nickel and dime you to death in their inspection. So I said, they may beat us, but at the end of the day, they'll probably be closer to where we're at anyways. And that, again, kind of helping on her. And that was before I even made her an offer yet, but she'd already told me those 2 offers, and it was part of that budget step. So anyway, we ended up getting it, and I was 35,000 less than that Florida offer, but I created enough doubt in that company where we got it.
Yeah. Like I don't mind competition, but if I'm talking to them and I find out that there's competition, I almost like just put my pen down and go, I'm confused. Like, then like, why am I here if you already had another company out, right? That's my initial thought is like, well, then why am I here? Now, I know why I'm there because the price is probably too low, right? So you need to sit there and go, well, I'm confused. Why am I here? You talk to 3 other investors. Why haven't you gone with them? And they'll tell you why, right? Also, I don't like to talk bad about my competition because they're either going to sell to them or not. I like to build them up actually. And then I'll ask questions going, well, when you read their offer, did you notice that there's an inspection period? Or did they leave you an offer? When you ask them, have they ever changed the price? So that's how I like to plant seeds, is a build them up and then ask questions if you guys talk about some doubt. Okay, good. I mean, we can go in depth on these type of topics right here and how to deal with competition. But I want to move on here. I want to talk about, do you do a step out? What I mean by that is that you're in the house, you leave for a little while, and you come back and make an offer. Do you guys do a step out most of the time?
Most of the time. Yeah.
Okay.
I
So,
do.
Do you try to get them to commit to a yes or no before you step out? And if so, why?
I make sure
And
back
what
to the budget
if a
number.
no to an offer?
Sorry, I make sure back to the budget number that my offers that it's going to be an acceptable number for them. Otherwise, they won't step out. I'll just carry, end it from there. That to me is important. Yeah, the decision process goes back to, are they going to say yes or no today, or where are they at, and then it just depends on the situation of what they're doing.
Before you step out, do you summarize what you guys have talked about before you step out?
When I remember to.
Yeah. Most of the time I do. I usually just say, hey, now before I step out, this is what I understand, of what we talked about today. I'm gonna come back and give you a number. I'm hoping they're gonna be close to what we discussed already. So at least try and give them. And then I always leave them, because I come in with my folder with the sample contract, and I say, while I'm out in the car, I want you to read through the sample contract. This is exactly what it's gonna look like, except that we're gonna fill in the numbers right here. And if you have any questions in the next, I'll probably be out for 20 or 30 minutes. I want you to ask me those questions when I come back, because we'll be ready to write a contract when I come back. So that's usually how I leave it.
Good. So before I go to the car, I go, all right, so we talked about this, that you want to sell because of pain 1, 2, and 3. You are hoping to get around this price, and you want to close on this date. You want to leave furniture behind. Did I miss anything? And they say, that's great. I'm like, okay, so outside of price, let's just play the pretend game that I come back to my car and I give you a price that you like. What happens next, right? Or outside of price, are you happy with what we've talked about, and would you move forward with me outside of price? So I have that some sort of conversation that I get a commitment from them on exactly what we talked about. Yes, I agree to that, and I agree to a ballpark price. And then I do exactly what you do, Steve. I leave them on contract. We'll read through it. Okay, so on your step out, what are you guys doing? Are you guys driving more comps, calling anyone? Is it just killing time? Are you have a spreadsheet? What do you guys normally do on your step out?
So I have Brad Alstrom. He's always aware that I'm going to be calling him within probably 30 minutes to an hour of an appointment. So he's ready on standby, and then I just go over. We just fine tune the numbers a little bit and go over exactly how much rehab we think it's going to be, and then go back in and make the offer. So usually it's about 30 minutes or so that I'm out in the car.
I rerun numbers, just crunch them, reconfirm comps. I mean, just make sure I'm good with it. I try not to make it too long because it can get uncomfortable. They might jump on a call with a real estate agent or another investor. What, you know, you never know. I've had a few scenarios go wacky if I wait too long, and then we may get into this later. But when I go back into the house, I always ask, "Hey, has anything changed?" Before I go into the offer.
I'll make sure when I go out what my time frame is. If I told them 45 minutes to an hour and I'm already at 45 minutes to an hour, I'll say, hey, I'm probably about another 10 minutes in the car. Is that still okay with you? We go over a little bit. And then I go out to the car with John, and kind of like what Steve said, me and John just go back over the numbers, our rehab number. A lot of times John will write up a full list and then write down the rehab cost number. Because then sometimes we'll go back in and he'll pull that out and say, what do you guys think it'll cost to redo all this stuff, and see if they can give us a rehab number. And when they do, a lot of times John will pull his number out, and most times we're pretty close to matching them. Or this is another tactic that we have in terms of like, so they can expect, right, there's going to be 50 grand in rehab, that they can't expect full price with all this stuff going on. But that's kind of another piece of it. But yeah, we'll step out about 10 minutes is all, put numbers in our spreadsheet, make sure the numbers work, and then go over what we're going to go do next when we go back inside.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we already know if we're going to buy the house or not. It's just more of like the theatrics of going out there. I got to crunch the numbers. I got to put them in the computer, and it's going to spit out a price, and we'll see if we're close, right? So I will.
I think a lot of it. Sorry, you're. Yeah, a lot of it is during the appointment. I keep saying, yeah, I'm here on behalf of the company, the company. And so me stepping out is just reaffirming, hey, I need to confirm this with the company, that, all these details. So that's why, it's more about, it's just the whole upfront contract I've explained to him. This is, I'm here on behalf, I got to send the pictures out. It's going to take a little bit of time, but they're usually surprised it's going to be within 30 minutes. Whoa, that's fast. That's great.
Yeah, it depends on what your approach is from the very beginning. I'm not the corporate guy. I'm the buyer. It's my cash. That's how I've always done every buy appointment. So it's hard for me to sit here and take a half an hour when I'm the decision maker. But yeah, you continue on with what role you're in if you're representing corporate or buying it yourself. All right, so you're finished with the car. You come back in. I'm sure we all ask, hey, is there any other questions? Is anything else we have to discuss? I'm sure you might have some follow-up questions you might want to ask. But it's time to give your offer, right? You're at that point of the appointment. That's time for you to be the professional, be the smartest guy in the room. Yes, I can do this, and that. And now it's time to give your offer. How do you guys present your offer to the seller?
I think a lot of it depends on what work I've done in discovery to find out what their number is. If we're close to what their number is, then it changes. If you're still shooting from the hips, which you should never be, but sometimes they're just really, really hard, it's a different conversation. Some, let's say, for example, they wouldn't give me much more than a huge range, or they're just shopping, or I won't say just shopping, but they're just waiting for an offer from me. I'll even just try, say, hey, if you had to guess, where do you think they came? I've tried that a few times, and that's another way to try to get the number out of them before you give them the number, because it's them guessing where it might be, and that could change it on the fly. I'm sure they're going to be way low in this range, and then you can kind of confirm, yeah, you're right, or or hey, you might be surprised it actually ended up being higher than that. And so a lot of it just depends on when you left to go out to the car, and how good you were at getting the number from them or range from them.
Are you guys giving a even number, or is it ends like in 374?
I always give an odd number. Usually ends in 270 or something off, so it looks like we really did punch in the numbers and the computer literally spit out, or corporate came back with a specific number based on repairs that need to be done. It looks a little more official when it's a odd number.
Yeah, we usually end in 700 on ours. And then if they're really hemming and hawing, then we'll say, you know what, Don't tell. I'll have to eat this one, but I'll just make it even. We'll just round it up $300 more. All good. So
I like to write my number down on my binder in here with the closed. And then I walk in, and then if I don't know their number, I'll sometimes play the tactic of like, all right, look, my number is written right here. I'm not going to change it. What were you really hoping to get? I mean, I'm going to show you what my number is. What were you hoping to, what your number is? Right. And then a lot of times they'll spill the beans there. Not to sound weird, but sometimes I'll write 2 numbers on 2 different pages in case I need a good offer. I'm gonna kill them.
oh my gosh, magician just revealed his trick right there.
This is a little sidebar thing. I'm doing that.
How do you have my
times.
card?
Yeah, so it's like, here's my number, right? But I always do an odd number. And when I present the number, I'm sure everybody does this, right? I just say 325, 342. And I just shut up. And I just wait for their response. And then react from there, basically. And I always will take that 342 up to like 345 or whatever I got to go back to, and I'll make it an even number at the end, but I always present an odd number. There's some psychology behind why you should do that, if you don't know. So
great information. So yes, sometimes depending on the personality of the seller, I will write it down or have it on my calculator. I'll do the exact same thing. Like, I'm not going to change it. I will show you, but I'm just curious, where do you think I'll be at? Because that does open up a lot right there. Because if they are a lot higher, you're like, I'm not even going to show you my offer, right? And they'll beg you, right? So that's a tactic. For me, I'm always taking the stance of it's going to be too low. And I change my tone. I'm apologetic. I'm like, it's okay. I want them to feel comfortable telling me no. Because remember, 45 minutes ago in the upgrade contract, we told them that we might not be the right fit. And it's possible that you're going to tell me no. If it is, are you comfortable telling me no, right? Well, this is the part that you have to remind them that it's okay to tell you no. So before I give the offer, I remind them, majority of the time my offer is too low, and that's okay. If it is, just tell me no, we'll leave as friends. It's the exact same thing I said half an hour ago. And so that's how I present my offer, assuming that's going to be too low. I end it in 505, same thing. The reason why is that I can track how many offers were accepted on my initial offer. Because if my offers ended 505, I knew I probably blew it. Like, I could have gone lower. So any questions from the audience regarding the step out, presenting the offer?
Ryan, I'm just going to add one last thing that I have done in the past. I don't do it often lately, is sometimes I'll give them a range. If they're somewhat indecisive and through the decision discovery, I found out that they're not quite ready, depending on the offer, what it might be. I'll give them a range, and that kind of gives me an in or an out one way or another. But I like having just a set number. If they're ready to make a decision, I have a set number.
All right. So what happens if they say no to your offer? What would you guys do? Nope, that's way too low.
I got a great story. This is Heidi. I met with a seller, and I had actually, it was a very unique property, big, had ginormous, had like 7 different sheds on the property, a big 2-story structure in back. So it was very odd comp. And I had actually run the pictures by Gus because I had gone out there and it was vacant, and it was a contractor trashing it out who said, hey, you need to meet with this guy. I gave him your name. He's going to sell it, but he told him to sell it to you. So I'd run out while he was trashing it out and took pictures, and I sent it to Gus, and he said his buy number would be about 305, and that it probably wasn't comping, that'd be about the highest an investor would pay. So I go out the next day and meet with the seller and his wife, and they have a completely unrealistic number. We want 340. And it's comping barely over 400. It's ridiculous. They're never going to get. So I said, you know what? I'm just not, unfortunately, I'm not the right buyer for you, but I may be able to find someone. If that's really you're solid, why don't you let me go to work for you? Give me 5 days. It's called an option contract. It just basically says
let me send this out to my network of investors. I'll blast it far and wide. And at the end of the day, you'll have several hundred, maybe even 1,000 pairs of eyes on these pictures. And we'll just see. Maybe I can't get you your number, but maybe I can. Who knows? So I blasted it out and we were getting offers. I even put it on the MLS with their permission. And we were getting offers in the mid 200s, high 200s as expected. So in talking to them, I think it's an emotional thing. And after 4 or 5 days, they're like, okay, you know what? 300's our bottom line. If you can just get us 300. So I did an addendum, got them 300. In the 11th hour, I have a guy who comes forward who has a cousin who's a hoarder. Long story short, 360. They're buying it at 360. And so as a quick assignment. And I never would have found that if I wouldn't have blasted it out. I never in a million years would have dreamed that no investor would have paid that number. But doing the option, saying, give me a few days. The contract said, I'm going to send it out. You can cancel in 5 days if I don't have a buyer, yada, yada. But they get emotionally attached to you and they feel like you're going to work for them, and they're more reasonable. I've done that several times and made nice assignments because you throw it on MLS especially, and you can find people willing to pay stupid things that I never would have paid. So that's my story.
Awesome. Nice work.
Yeah, usually if they say no to my number, depending on what the conversations go, I'll be like, yeah, I totally understand. And it's okay. We don't buy everything that we see. And I'll be like, well, now that the process is over and I'm not buying your house, what would you really be willing to sell it for? You know, and see if they'll give me a better number and see if I can get back in the game that way. Or I'll say, so what are your next steps? What are you going to do now that I'm not your option? You know, what do you think you can do then? And then my end goal will be what Heidi just said. I'll offer the option contract, but not until I've exhausted the opportunity to still buy the property and try to get a better number out of them and kind of relive their pains. What are you going to do now? You know, no, I'm not going to buy it. What are you going to do? You know, and see what they say.
So good, Sean, because we told them that they can say no, right? That we're not the right fit. So you have to continue on with that. They say no, great, our appointment's over. And you can have a conversation and you can lightly say, hey, I'm just curious, you know, since it didn't work out, what's your plan B? What are you going to do now? And you just make it like a normal conversation and they'll tell you. And all of a sudden now you're right back in the game, right? So we've heard all about this, but that transition of like, yep, I knew it was going to be a no. That's okay. I appreciate her time. You walk out. What's your plan B? What were you hoping to get? Okay. So often the real negotiating happens after they tell us a no. Okay. So there's the Sandler mindset of go for the no and go for the no early. Right. That's when it really happens, is when they let their guard down, knowing that the appointment's over. Right. So they say yes. All right. They said yes to our offer. You came to an agreement. Walk me through maybe your process of pulling up the contract, going through it. What type of contract do you use? Briefly share with us. They said yes. What are your next steps during the buy appointment to get everything signed?
So if they say yes, I try not to act like relieved and excited, because then they're going to feel like, oh boy, you know, I'm getting ripped off. But I pull out the contract and go over it with them thoroughly. We talked a little bit about next steps as far as what it's going to look like with the title company. We go through it and choose dates, talk about maybe an honor before, talk about the specifics with the contract. I mean, and then I don't know if you want to get into the post-close sale, but I always make sure that during that process with signing the contract, there's some sort of conversation about.
Yeah, we'll talk about the post-sale. Spencer, do you use a realtor contract, or do you have?
I have a page and a half, just a real simple contract. Yep.
Steve, do you use a realtor contract or a wholesale contract?
Whatever Clint Ship gave me. I got a 4-page contract that I use.
I use your contract that you had, Ryan, like you just added, you know, went through it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like a 3 or 4 pager, pretty simple.
Are you guys going through it fast, quick? How do you guys normally handle that conversation of going through it?
You're saying once they've said yes. So basically pull out the contract and I say, hey, I just want to make sure you're very comfortable with it. I know I'd left it beforehand. You know, did you have any questions about it? You know, sometimes they've reviewed it, sometimes they have. If they haven't, I'll go line by line just to make sure they understand everything. And then I'll explain every line so that they don't feel like they're getting hoodwinked. And then after they sign it, and we're done, then I give them the contract back and I say, okay, this is your last opportunity here. Tear it up. And they usually go, what are you talking about? So if you don't feel 100% comfortable with this, I really want you to just tear up this contract and we'll go. And they usually go, no, it's time to go. Time to sell it. Let's go. So that way I've explained it 100%. Then they have an opportunity to rip it up. They've really had 2 opportunities to say, I'm not comfortable with this.
So are you leaving them a copy?
Yeah. So I take 2, and I have them sign both. I just fill them both out the exact same way, and we sign both. That way, we each have a copy.
Spencer, Sean, do you guys take 2, or do you guys send an email with 1?
Both. If they want a copy, then yeah, I'll make them a copy. Otherwise, I let them know, hey, I'll have this email to you. And so oftentimes I'll try to email it to them right there, scan it and email it to them right away, so they have a copy of it. If they're, worried about every little sentence and are holding on to it, then I make sure to always give them even just leave them that copy. If I don't have both 2 copies to leave or to sign with them, but usually 2 copies is best, but it just helps them feel a little more comfortable.
So what I like is if you leave them the contract review before you step out, that process is so much faster. Like, were you able to go through the contract? Do you have any questions about it?
Yeah.
You can answer their questions, and then I say, hey, I will go through this as fast or as slow as you want me to do. What would you like for me to do? I'm asking them permission. And like, I read it, let's go, man. Let's assign it. Like, I can't tell you how many times I just ask them, what do they prefer? Like, dude, we're good, let's sign. I got to go. And I'm like, cool, let's go. But I always hit the high points no matter what. It's important to at least go over some of the key points, even if they're ready to sign on the dotted line. So that's important to me. So we talked lightly about the post sale, and if you're going to stand there, we know what the post sale is. That is making sure that they don't want to back out. And so do you guys have a post-sale conversation? I think you mentioned it before you signed it. Do you want to tear it up? Do you guys say anything else regarding the post-sale conversation?
I used to try the lottery clause and I liked it, and it ended up working good. It kind of sets the stage to make sure they understand that this isn't a letter of intent. This is a true contract. And just like I'm holding you accountable, this is just as much of a safety net for you to ensure that I don't back out of the contract. So we kind of talk about that. But what's worked for me recently that I like is just, hey, oftentimes neighbors, friends, or family members might hear that you're selling your property through us or to an investor. Sometimes they always have better ideas or a friend that might be in the business, and help me understand what that might look like, or friends that haven't been part of this conversation and part of what we've discussed, and understand your situation and what we're able to do. When those friends tell you, hey, you're crazy for going with them, or I have a guy that should be better, what's that going to look like for them? So you kind of bring the future to the present and have them tell you exactly how they're gonna confront that conversation. You can approach it like history tells me, or last week Sally signed this contract and her neighbor saw that we were at the house and came over and they had a bunch of, you tell a story. This may or may not happen to you. If it does, help me understand how would that look for you? What would you say to them? So that's worked for me, but I'd love to hear from others.
So in my contract, I think, Sean, you have it in the very, very top. I have it in bold. It says, do not sign this contract unless you're ready to sell, right? So I'm all business going to the contract. I'm the professional. and I have them read it. We're good. We go through it. And before they sign, it's even in bigger fonts. Again, I say, all right, don't sign it unless you're ready to sell. I have them read it. So twice in the contract, I'm all business. And then we sign the contract. And that's when I'll make a joke. Lottery clause. Hey, you're not going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, oh my goodness, what did I do? And call me to cancel. That's when I kind of play the joke, make it light, ha, 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 ha. But the important part for all us to remember is if you beat out another investor, you need to have that conversation on bring the future to the present. What happens when X investor calls you and you tell them you sold to me and they offer you more money? What is that conversation going to look like? What are you going to do? What are you going to say? You have to role play with them because it's going to happen. The investor goes, oh, I'll pay $1,000 more. And so it's important that everyone has that conversation post sale, especially when there's another competitor in the picture or another person who wants to buy it. Fair? Okay, there's a couple more small items here. We're done with the bulk of it. Is there any questions, any topics, anything that we can talk about from anyone?
I do like the idea when you present the number too, and they go, you know, you say, okay, all right, 30. If I could do it for 305, what would you say then? Like, I was sign the contract. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Like, throw that back in there as another opportunity to make them stop and rethink, you know, before you get to that post-possession aspect of all. But then, like you guys said, do all the other stuff as well, which is super vital.
Good. All right, so if anyone has any questions, you can jump in. One thing that I do, and the disclosure is, do your own research, make sure it's legal, but I have my iPad and I record the whole buy appointment. It's recording. I push record before I ring the doorbell, and I leave it on the whole time. For one, training purposes, I can go back and listen. Where did I make a mistake? How can I improve? But also in a case in a court of law, at least I have a record in Arizona of a recording. If you can't do that, what I often do is I usually take a picture or record it as they're signing the contract. I don't want anyone coming back going, I never signed the contract. I never agreed to this. So I often protect myself that way. But remember, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable. You know, there's laws regarding recording and conversations, but I often do that also.
Ryan, I have a suggestion on that one.
Yeah, Lamar.
I always have them grab their license, their driver's license, and then on the last signature page, I put the license down and I take a picture of the whole thing with their license on there. And I'm like, this is just to prove that I was actually here. We actually talked. We actually did this kind of thing. So that's how I do it. And then, you know, it's happened before. Like, I don't know if I signed a contract. Here's your picture right here. Remember we talked, and remember when I had this, and I asked you, are you sure you're okay? And I had you hand me your license. Oh yeah, I do remember that. And that's the number we put on there. Yeah, here's the whole thing. Okay, well, you must be right.
Wow. Thank you, Lamar. That's great. That's real good. So there's a few documents floating around Uggville, and Michael has some, I have some on kind of like a worksheet for the buy appointments. My plan is to take this video, take all those, and I plan on putting something together for all of us, a little play sheet for the buy appointment. So I'll be working on that next few weeks, get that out to you. I'm sure you've seen the emails from corporate. Larry Goodman has put together a few play sheets in Uggville. If you go to the global search and type in play sheets, you'll see some stuff that corporate has been starting to put together. Really nice stuff there. So good, man. I mean, I think this was a good call. You know, remember that this was just high level topics here. Okay. If you want to get down and dirty, sign up for Sandler, meet with Michael and myself, and we can work on the details of the buy appointment, especially the upfront contract. So we're here to help you guys out. You know, Michael, do you want to talk briefly on the disc and the RAK? I know you like that.
I don't know that we need to, and that's part of the bonding rapport. It's important to just make your sellers comfortable, right? And Sean talked about that earlier, just having them at ease, their style, their approach, and recognizing both their communication modality as well as their kind of personality styles. So that's something we've done other training. I think we have some recordings on it. We can dig into that. On one of the cheat sheets that I've used and that Max Casey used is he puts the VAK and disc at the top, so he can kind of just circle what he thinks it is, and he can refer back to that, and he can scan it and attach it to his UGVille record and that kind of stuff. So we won't get into it now, but that's one of the things that'll be on this play sheet or the cheat sheet. So just keep that in mind as you're doing the bonding report.
Great, thank you. So if there's no other further questions, I'm going to stop the recording, but we can stay on and have side conversation if we want. So are there any other questions for the panel or for myself? Great. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate everyone taking time of the day again. Appreciate the panel. This is great. This is recorded, and I'll send this out for everyone to be able to reference back in the future. So thank you, everyone.